For the last year and a half, I've played on a Pokemon Go profile where I can only use shiny Pokemon, so I know how frustrating and rewarding shiny hunting in Pokemon Go can be. In this video, I'm going to bring you through all of the tips and tricks to make you a shiny hunting pro. Let's get into it. Before you can truly start shiny hunting, you are going to need to understand shiny odds. This is the chance that any one Pokemon you encounter ends up being a shiny. Starting with a wild Pokemon, I'm going to work my way up from lowest shiny odds all the way to highest. The lowest shiny odds a Pokemon can have in Pokemon Go is actually 0 if the shiny has not yet been released. Easiest way to figure this out is to just look it up on Google. Has this Pokemon shiny been released in Pokemon Go? And you will probably get your answer. After this, we have our basic Pokemon. This is going to be most of the Pokemon you find in the wild, and they have a 1 in 500 shiny chance. Next up is Pokemon that are already evolved, so while a Squirtle might have 1 in 500 shiny odds, a Blastoise will have 1 in 128 odds. It's going to be harder to find these Pokemon in the wild, but when you do find them, the shiny odds are going to be better. Now, this is where the odds start to get pretty good. Every Pokemon you see on the screen right now has 1 in 64 perma-boosted shiny odds. That means anytime you see this Pokemon in the wild, it is going to be a 1 in 64 chance for it to be shiny. When it comes to raids, Pokemon in 1-star and 3-star raids are going to have the same shiny odds that they would in the wild. However, Pokemon in Mega raids and Legendary raids are going to have very good odds. While the shiny odds for Mega Pokemon are going to be either 1 in 128 or 1 in 64, Mythicals and Legendaries out of Legendary raids have 1 in 20 shiny odds. This brings me to my first major tip of the day. When raiding, raid Legendaries. Some of you may not have a community with enough people to take out these Legendary raids, but that is where Discord servers come in. This will require you to use Pokecoins on remote raid passes, but it is definitely worth it as these Discord servers basically guarantee that you're able to take out these raids and get these 1 in 20 shiny odds. There are also apps that help you find remote raid parties, but I find the Discord servers work the quickest and the easiest. Now that you know all about shiny odds, this next suggestion is going to make so much sense. Take advantage of events. One of the most common events where you can catch dozens of shinies is going to be Community Days. During Community Days, only one Pokemon spawns in the wild and it has 1 in 25 shiny odds. After Community Days, one of the best events is Raid Days, which have either 1 in 10 or 1 in 20 shiny odds out of raids, and there are tons of raids spawning everywhere. Next up are Research Days, which typically highlight either 4 or 5 Pokemon, and the shiny odds are usually 1 in 10 out of field research. The final event that happens pretty commonly is going to be Hatch Days, which feature either 1 or 2 Pokemon with 1 in 10 odds out of 2-kilometer eggs. There are then events like Go Fest and Wild Area that only happen a couple times out of the entire year but are absolutely massive and are kind of a combination of all of the events I already described. Tons of raid bonuses, tons of hatch bonuses, tons of research bonuses, and tons of wild shiny chances. The moral of the story is that these are the best chances you're going to have to catch specific shinies, and the best shiny hunters are going to be absolutely grinding these events. Before I get into some advanced methods on how to increase the number of shinies you catch, I'm going to explain why hatching eggs is not the way to go for shinies. Excluding hatch days, the best shiny odds you're going to get from an egg is 1 in 64 if you hatch a Pokemon that has a released shiny. Unfortunately, a lot of Pokemon in eggs don't have released shinies, or their odds are going to be worse than 1 in 64, and with how expensive it is to hatch eggs in Pokemon Go, you are so much better off spending your Pokecoins on remote raid passes. You're able to catch the most shinies when you combine the highest shiny odds with the most Pokemon encountered. I just told you all the different ways to increase your shiny odds, so let's look at how to encounter more Pokemon. There's 2 ways we can do this, but both of them involve the idea that in order to catch more shiny Pokemon, you're going to need to not catch all of your non-shinies. The much simpler but less rewarding method is to simply exit encounters that are not shiny. In this method, you're giving up catching non-shinies in order to try to encounter more shinies. The more difficult but more rewarding method is this, which is called quick catching. This method allows you to throw one Pokeball and then immediately exit the encounter, still with a chance of catching that Pokemon. It's a pretty simple technique and I would definitely recommend this method. I'm not going to give a tutorial in this video, but there's certainly tons of tutorials out there. How Pokemon spawn in Pokemon Go is very complicated, but having a general understanding of this is going to be super helpful in figuring out where you need to play in order to catch the most shinies. To keep it simple, the most Pokemon generally spawn near sidewalks and Pokestops. Obviously, that means if you want more shinies and more spawns, you're going to need to play in an area with a lot of sidewalks and a lot of Pokestops. Wild Pokemon also always spawn at these same exact spawn points that never really change. This means if you're playing at, let's say, one area for an entire day and it continues to be bad, it's not going to get better the next day or the next. But if you find an area that's really good, it's not going to all of a sudden get much worse. This means you can experiment in your neighborhood or around your city to find what the best spots are to play Pokemon Go. My last piece of advice is going to be to combine all of the tips I've given you in this video. I guarantee that if you can use quick catching during an event in a place with high spawn rates, you're going to catch tons of shinies. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.